If you struggle with CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or you've suffered multiple concussions and TBIs and you're concerned that those are leading you toward CTE, or you have a loved one that's been exposed to multiple TBIs and chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a concern of yours, you may be looking for solutions to help yourself or your loved one with this chronic brain degeneration. The question is hyperbaric something that should be on that list of therapies to consider when dealing with either preventing or helping to treat or potentially even reversing some of that brain damage? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's a degenerative disease of the brain, and it results from chronic concussions or chronic traumatic brain injuries over time. This condition, of course, has become more popularized in sports like football or boxing, where we know that there's repetitive concussions. In fact, concussions in general have gotten more popularized in all of sports: soccer, surfing, lacrosse, rugby. There are so many more contact sports that it's now becoming obvious, even when there's subacute concussions, but over a long period of time, that those concussions are cumulative and ultimately leading to a destruction of brain tissue over time. The standard of care in concussion therapy is subpar at best. It typically starts with just the watching, waiting, and the removal of those contact sports for some period of time until symptoms start to abate. But we know that we need a much more active care plan for people who've been exposed to concussions. Even a mild single concussion in a person's life can become consequential years and years later. There's a lot of evidence to support using hyperbaric oxygen to help support patients who've suffered from concussion and TBI, to help improve brain tissue regeneration, to help reduce brain tissue inflammation, to help create neuroplasticity and regrow new neurons and new neuron synapses. We know that hyperbaric oxygen is a critical piece in the recovery of all concussion and TBI cases. While there's a lot of research on hyperbaric oxygen therapy for concussion and TBI, not as much exists right now for using hyperbaric with CTE. And we'll include a few of the studies on hyperbaric oxygen for concussion and TBI in the description below. But without a doubt, it would make sense that if we can use hyperbaric either during concussion exposure or after certain concussions to help reverse or reduce the symptoms associated with those concussions, it absolutely makes sense that we could also use hyperbaric oxygen for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, because that's exactly what it is chronic TBIs over long periods of time leading to a progressive brain degeneration. And so if we know that hyperbaric helps to reduce the inflammation associated with TBI and concussion, and we know that hyperbaric helps improve cognition, it helps stimulate central nervous system stem cells, it helps regrow capillary beds all over our body, but especially in our brain. If there's a neuroprotective effect of hyperbaric and a neuroregenerative effect of hyperbaric, and we've been using it for concussion and TBI, it most certainly is reasonable to believe that we should be able to apply it to CTE as well. But what I would like to say, which I think is the most important part of this entire video, is that hyperbaric needs to be an ongoing portion of a contact athlete's life so that we don't even get to that level in the first place. Can we prove prevention? Of course not. However, if we know that hyperbaric has that effect on brain tissue, and we know that the effect of concussions and TBIs are cumulative over time, and we know that concussions and TBIs are an occupational hazard for a contact sport athlete, meanwhile, that athlete uses their sport for their career, then what we need to have are meaningful strategies to support our athletes throughout their entire career, and not just waiting until they become professional athletes. So many of these concussions are earlier in their life, in elementary school, in middle school, and high school. Those are where some of the first concussions and the first TBIs occur. And without a standard of care for those early concussions that will minimize the long-term consequences, I believe it's inevitable for us to end up with this progressive degeneration in our later years. And so not only could we use hyperbaric, of course, in these later phases, but I want to make a plea to you to say, let's consider using something like hyperbaric therapy throughout the entire athlete's career, all the way from elementary and middle school, all the way through their professional career. That any time that there's a potential that there was a concussion or multiple concussions, that we start acting as if there's something we can do about it now, so that we're not waiting until later where we're trying to reverse the long-term consequences, that we're actually starting to heal in the acute phase of those concussions so that we never end up with the chronic traumatic encephalopathy or the chronic degeneration of brain tissue later on in our careers. And if you want more information specifically about hyperbaric oxygen therapy applied for concussion and TBI, you can click that link over there and it'll take you directly to that video. You can check that out. So I hope this helps answer some of the thought processes that we use in our office, whether or not we're going to apply hyperbaric therapy for somebody with a concussion or a TBI, or if we're going to apply hyperbaric therapy for somebody with CTE. The answer, of course, is yes. And these are the reasons why. I hope that helps answer some of those questions, and we'll see you on the next video. So whether you're a chiropractor or a naturopath or an acupuncturist or a DO or even an MD, but you're looking at hyperbarics through this lens, the lens that I'm describing, which is applying hyperbarics for all these off-label conditions, this is the class that teaches that. And right now it's the only class that teaches this type of hyperbarics in this way, and that's an actual certification course. Check out hbotusa.com, and right across the top you'll see upcoming events. You can click on that and it'll show you when our next courses are going to be.